So hello everyone. Welcome back. Second video of the day today because this is massive news. Giga massive mega news. The 2023 Valorant teams reveal. If you have been living under a rock and have no idea what this is referring to, one, welcome back from your rock. But two, basically, very, very short, next year and going on till maybe forever, who knows, the heat death of the universe, VCT will be played with 10 teams in 3 different international leagues, one in Americas, one in Emea, and one in Asia. And basically, those 10 teams from each league, so 30 overall, will form the backbone of Tier 1 Valorant for at least, I think it's rumored, 4 years that the contracts last for. So these teams are like in those leagues, no matter what. They can't be relegated, anything like that. They will be there. They will be the main competitors for VCT for a pretty long time. So this is very, very important, and you'll need to get used to these teams, right? So let's talk about them and let's dive in. And we'll start here with the Americas League, which is being held and based in LA, as you can see. And these are the teams. So we have Sentinels, 100 Thieves. Sentinels got in, 100 Thieves. Cloud9, NRG, Evil Geniuses, Furia, Loud, Made in Brazil, Crew Esports, and Leviathan. Now, these 10 teams, to me, I obviously don't know much, and going forward, you know, I'll just straight up say it. I don't know about the backgrounds of these orgs and how sustainable these orgs are or whatever. That was Riot's job to figure that out. And so I won't be talking about individual orgs that much, because honestly, it doesn't matter, right? Don't even think about their current rosters or whatever you think about the current, doesn't matter. Their roster will almost certainly look different. Almost every single team's roster, maybe outside of Loud in this group, will be different, and I can almost guarantee that, you know, by the time we start next year. Everyone but Loud, honestly, maybe across all 3 leagues, will probably look a bit different. Very few teams are going to keep their 5 together, because one thing you might have noticed about this list is that Optic isn't there, right? Optic, who are perhaps the most, you know, successful team so far in Valorant, full stop, you know, and definitely the most successful team this year, not in it, right? And this is kind of a bit of a theme, and we'll get into some of the other teams as well when we talk about this, is that past success seems to have not played much of a role at all when it came to Riot's decision-making of who was going to make it in. So, you know, Optic, basically, I would assume, are going to be free agents. And this is going to be true for other teams that I talk about later who also didn't get in, right? That if you're wondering, well, what's going to happen to Ye? Is Ye going to play in Tier 2 Valorant? Probably not. The thing is, though, unless one of these orgs wants to massively splash some cash, you know, Optic probably are going to have to split up, right? Because unless you want to, you know, buy out all 5 players, which, as I said, and get rid of your whole team as well, by the way, you know, unless you want to do that, which is be an extreme move, it might actually pay off, because obviously we know those players are good, but, you know, unless you really want to make some big money moves, it's probably more likely that, you know, the team gets picked apart and one player goes here, maybe 2 players go there, right? One goes here. That's probably more likely overall than this. Now, that's going to be true for any team who obviously didn't make it. I mean, you could say, you know, teams like Exet, the Guard, right? It's true for them as well. That any team that isn't in here, you know, is probably gonna, the best parts of them are gonna just get picked apart and eventually fall into the Tier 1 system. So, as I said, whatever you think about the current roster does not matter whatsoever. You know, because there's just going to be so much change. And that's true for coaching staffs as well, right? I mean, you know, Chet's a free agent now. I think he's proven himself that, yeah, he's a top coach. Probably will get a job with one of these teams, I would have thought. So keep that in mind, that whatever you think currently about the team doesn't matter whatsoever, right? So that's one thing. The second thing I really want to talk about, and this will be true less so for the EMEA League, but certainly for the Americas and the Pacific League as well, is the distribution of teams. Because we have 5 NA teams, we have 3 Brazilian teams, and we have 2 LATAM teams. Now, I'm kind of glad it's ended up in this way. I was kind of worried that we'd end up in a situation where there was like 7 NA teams, 2 Brazilian teams, 1 LATAM team. I was really worried that that was going to be the case. And I know some of you from NA might be like, well, that should have been the case, but let me explain why I think it shouldn't be the case. So, Valorant, as I'm sure most of you are aware, or at least some of you will be aware, has a very balanced ecosystem in terms of the regional parity, especially at the top level, right? Literally any team from any region, it's not a shock, right? Leviathan beat Team Liquid or Paper X, not a shock. I mean, they literally did that at Champs, right? So that's not a shock if that happens. It's the same if any team can beat another one, right? We saw Zeta Division get to third, right? Any region can beat any other region, and most games wish that they could have that, but Valorant is in just a very, very good position right now. We're at the top level. The balance between the different regions is extremely close, and so I was worried that, okay, let's say, NA did get 7 spots and LATAM only got 1, that's a big problem for the LATAM scene, that, they might only have kind of, 5 spots for players, and they might only, it might be difficult to break that glass ceiling. And what if that team isn't good, right? In a year where that team just can't get it together, what do the LATAM fans root for, right? Who do they root for if their team sucks, right? At least they've got 2 teams now to where if one sucks, they can kind of, go, well, at least we got this other one that hopefully isn't as bad. And so that, I think, is a good thing. I think the distribution is good overall for kind of the parity of the game and the kind of league health overall. Now, one thing I've seen as well is, a lot of people from NA worried that there's only 25 spots for NA players, right? There's only 25 spots for NA players. Like, oh, but there's like at least 30 good ones. So, well, what's going on here, right? The thing is as well, and perhaps this won't be as true early on, but I think particularly as we go on down the years, all these teams and players will, be forced to locate somewhat near LA, right? That's where it's all being held. So, they're gonna probably have to coalesce near LA somewhere. And so it probably means that the players will be, living in America, speaking English daily. So I think that particularly as time goes on, we will start to see some mixed rosters, right? Where you get a half LATAM, half NA team, right? That wouldn't shock me at all if that was the case. I think that is kind of a likely outcome that, we will see more mixed rosters as time goes on. As I said, early on, maybe not so much, as teams kind of, if you're a Brazilian team or whatever, you might go in with an all Brazilian squad. But particularly as we go on in the future, I think that we will see a bit more of a mix. So don't think of it as like NA has 25 slots, LATAM has 10 slots, Brazil has 15 slots. I don't think that is kind of how it will end up working out, even if at the start it does. And as I said, we will see a ton of different roster changes going on to start with. Maybe every team outside of Loud in this list will probably change someone on their team. I wouldn't be shocked at all. So definitely interesting, and I think a decent list overall. Obviously, Optic being a big miss out. Some others like the Guard, TSM as well, not in there. Obviously, I didn't make the decision, so I don't know why Riot did pick certain orgs or not. But on the whole, I think this is a perfectly fine list. Moving on to EMEA, and we come to Berlin, and these are the 10 teams. And EMEA, I think, provides a bit of a different challenge to the other 2 leagues, because EMEA is a bit more kind of just already a mix, right? It's not weird to have mixed rosters. You get Turkish players playing on, teams like Ascend for CNED or Alphia for Fnatic, right? You get a team like FPX who are like a, CIS mixed team, like kind of thing, but they speak English, right? So EMEA is a bit different, where the sort of regions, I feel like, don't matter as much, and it seems like that is kind of the case, because we have actually 3 Spanish teams and 2 French teams in here as well, but no like DAC teams. We've got 2 Turkish teams. Navi are kind of the only CIS representative, so it's clear that they probably didn't care as much about the kind of individual like tiny regions. Is there a DAC team in there? It seems like that was less of a kind of concern here in EMEA, which I can kind of understand, because if there's a good German player, like Twiston, for instance, from Big, yeah, he's probably going to end up on one of these teams anyway, right? Like, it'll be fine. And so, most of the teams are probably just going to be mixed language English teams. I don't think, even though there are some good Spanish players, I don't think there's probably quite enough, top level Spanish talent to form 15 slots worth, full Spanish teams. I don't think that'll quite be the case either. So I'm sure that it will be a bit mixed, but again, we've got some, teams that, have missed out. And again, it seems like past success, not such of a big deal. Obviously, MyOrg, Ascend, you've got FPX, obviously, as well. But then a big one that I think a lot of people were shocked at was no G2. Now, there was rumors of G2 trying to get in the Americas League as well. Obviously, there was that sort of recent drama with Carlos that, I won't talk about too much here. But G2 are not in this league. And I think that is a big shock to a lot of people, that they're not in either of the Americas or the EMEA League, right? They're just not in it, because obviously G2 is kind of one of the bigger orgs, worldwide. It's kind of a name that, is present in a lot of esports, right? So that is a bit of a shock, and you know, we'll have to see how that goes forward. I mean, you know, imagine if like G2 lost the Ascension game as well. That would be almost quite funny in a way. But yeah, these are the 10 teams we will be going forward with. And again, there's going to be a lot of roster changes. There is 2 Turkish teams. That's the kind of one thing that I think is kind of similar to, you know, me saying like I'm glad LATAM got 2 teams. I'm kind of glad that Turkey got 2 teams as well for the same reasons, right? What if one of them is just like a bottom feeder all the time, right? At least they might have another team that, you know, can kind of, you know, get it together. And as I said, I think again, within time, you know, there probably, you know, might be a Turkish mixed roster, right, where it might not be a full Turkish roster. Things like that I think could easily happen as well. And yeah, I don't have too much to say about the overall teams. I don't know too much about them. Carmine Corp did run that cool like game against Vitality, I think it was. That was quite cool. Maybe we'll see more things like that. But I mean, Riot mentioned it, that, you know, kind of the crucial thing for them was to have, you know, kind of a building for the future, right? How are you gonna, you know, make storylines for us and things like that? How are you gonna promote the players and all of that? How can we work with you? And I think that, you know, that it seems like was clearly the foundation for, you know, going forward and what they made their decision ultimately on. And then finally we come to the Pacific League, and I do actually quite like the logos for Pacific and EMEA. I mean, the Americas one, you know, classic NA, and I guess South America as well. Now you can do better than this. You know, at least these 2 are somewhat interesting. But yeah, let's talk about the teams in here. And again, I don't know too much about the teams. Obviously, Zeta will be a big fan favorite, but I think a big thing, and it was kind of rumored that Japan might only get 1 slot, and that would have been an absolute travesty, and that would have been a disastrous decision in my opinion personally. So I'm very glad that Detonation Gaming, don't know much about them, but they're a Japanese org, and I'm just glad that Japan got 2 slots. Then we have Genji T1 and DRX. Now, interesting thing obviously about Genji and T1 is that they were in NA, they were NA teams, but now they are, you know, Korean, or, you know, they kind of always had that connection to Korea as they're kind of Korean NA orgs, you know, and so now they're kind of being moved back essentially to Korea because it will be in Seoul. So yeah, 3 Korean teams with DRX. Obviously, most of us will be familiar with them as well. And again, we're going to see probably big roster changes here, particularly for Genji and T1. We've got Team Secret, Paper Rex, 2 familiar names, Rex Origam Kion, Talon Esports, and Global Esports as well. I know a lot of Indian fans will be very happy that Global Esports did manage to get in. And again, so we've got this kind of balance of 3 Korean teams, 2 Japanese teams, 4 APAC teams, and 1 South Asian team or Indian team. And again, I think that's a pretty good balance overall. You know, Paper X was one that I think a lot of people didn't think would actually get in as an org, but they did, and so that team. Yeah, speaking of teams that might stick together, again, DRX, Paper X might be 2 of the teams that actually do kind of, you know, fully stick together and make that work as a team. But yeah, other than them, there will again be a ton of different roster moves going on. The different APAC teams, I'm not too familiar, particularly with Rex and Talon Esports. So I'm not sure exactly like where they are like based. I kind of went on VLR and saw that they both had Philippines rosters as well as Team Secret. But I'm assuming that, you know, as we go on, you know, one of them might make a Thai team, or, you know, one of them might make an Indonesian team, or, you know, maybe it's just all going to be a mix again, right? Where it's just a mix and they end up speaking English, kind of like Paper Rex does, who, you know, a majority Malaysian Singapore team. So we'll have to see overall, but I think again, this is a pretty good, you know, representation on the whole. I'm kind of excited to see what Global Esports can do and what, you know, they are gonna do, because that would be quite interesting. And we don't have all of the full details yet, right? Like, what are the rules about imports, right? Do you have to have 3 players? Is it 2 players, right? Would these teams be full of, you know, I don't know, you know, will Global Esports just go and sign a bunch of EMEA players like kind of Bleed did back in the day? We don't quite know all of the things yet, I think, unless I missed it somewhere. But yeah, these are the teams. These are the 30 teams that we're going to be seeing over and over again. And on the whole, I think I'm just glad that there is a decent representation across the board, particularly in the Americas and Pacific League, because that was my kind of main worry, I think, going forward. There wouldn't be enough, there wouldn't be a good balance, particularly with some of the rumors that were coming out. So that's kind of my main takeaway. It'll be very interesting to see where we go from here. Let me know what your thoughts are. Obviously, there were some, big orgs that didn't get in. Obviously, some of the more recently successful ones like Optic, FPX. And so, yeah, those kind of teams will probably be picked apart. And this is going to be a crazy, crazy offseason in terms of what the teams in the future look like. It's going to be very, very different indeed.